Hello, how are you today? Do you want to dive into a book that might just surprise you? Whether it becomes your next favorite or one you might skip? Let's find out what readers are saying about it.
Hirondelle not getting notifications who has 322 likes says, I want to thank this book for providing me with some much-needed perspective on what a really bad book is like. It made me feel a lot more kindly toward those not perfect but not this bad books I have been reading. Seriously. It made me feel like a snoop. As if I were intentionally peeking into somebody's teenage secret diary. Drippy. Sentimental. Wish fulfillment private fantasies with this oh-so-hot fictional historical crush. But the problem is not just that. Because authors can use that fantasy and still spin good stories and good world-building out of it. The problem is deeper at all levels. My personal opinion and all that. If you loved it, great for you. This is very much self-insert fanfic. The protagonist matches the author in age and ethnic background. And is coyly nameless throughout the book. According to this interview, the author got obsessed with a TV series and was writing fanfic. Not that she calls it that. But reading between the lines it was fanfic. But when finishing this manuscript, she mixed it with a bit of other writing. The bridge would become this very particular relationship to the British state, and the ways that power and control are grasped. So I basically lifted her wholesale out of one novel and put her in another. And yes, it feels like things mixed up but not in a good way. The feeling of being outsider in British culture. The family bits. The multiracial reflection feeling bits were emo the deepest in the novel. And that part felt honest. And I can respect it. The part where she acknowledges getting obsessed with polar exploration. Not that it matches the bio of the character up to then. But who is keeping track anyway? That was also good. So, our nameless female main character is hired to babysit an adult real life. Tragic heroic historical character who, for some reason, was picked by a time-traveling team. Because whatever reasons. And he is just going to be perfect boyfriend material. He learns how to cook modern Asian food. And fall in love with her. Because whatever reasons. It is the most fanfic traditionally published book I have read since at least In Memoriam, but that is unfair to In Memoriam. This is even worse. And like with In Memoriam, I feel it's not appropriate, for lack of a better word, to so cheaply use tragic real-life events. The Franklin expedition here, or World War I, for extra pathos and cheap thrills. And it does not even make any sense. History is filled with millions, billions of recorded deaths. Why pick these 5, even if you manage to justify the important one? Why go pick one in France and another in the middle of the Arctic? And nobody asked why they do it. What was the budget for that and why? Comparing them to foreign refugees was also totally stupid. See, calling them expats or refugees like they were any other nationality. Surely they still were British since they did not die? Or wait, they are supposed to get a job in a year. But the ministry is worried about them talking to outsiders? Also, what year is this? How old is our heroine? Her mother is a refugee from the Cambodian genocide. This is set some years after a pandemic. Tech is close to ours. But the climate change and rules about carbon emission already seem in the future? The nameless narrator, and FMC, was one of the stupidest and most passive main characters I remember reading about. She has no curiosity. No plan or agenda, no sense of internal politics. Is slow in the intake about everything. How would you interpret not the past? And is just thrown passively around whichever way. Go home. So I did. Nobody seems to have any deeper curiosity or think hard about time travel or ethics or large policy choices. Everybody just reacts. It's all veneer thin. Just to serve justifying boinking a hot historical character story. Incidentally, the sex scenes were purple prose and, to me, ridiculous. Some trigger warnings, a lot of tobacco and smoking. A lot. 72 mentions of the word cigarette. The FMC stopped smoking a while ago and just retakes it because her crush smokes. Whatever. And a trope about gay characters that made me roll my eyes because of course. Bury your gays. Of course. Tragic death of the other guy who of course has a crush on our dishy 19th century wise sailor. The lesbian fared a little better but still 50% mortality rate, a lot of plagiarism accusations. With review bombing of this book were flying around before its publication. It actually made me aware of it to try a sample now that it was out. So maybe it worked out great for the author. Though not for me. The accusation is that it has many points in common with a Spanish TV series called The Ministry of Time. But in Spanish. I have absolutely no idea if true or not because I do not know that TV series. But ideas or concepts usually are fair use. See how much fiction was written about the real-life tragic polar expedition so shamelessly used here. And this book has far more obvious issues, for my taste and so on, than that to disrecommend it. So, TLDR. This book and me it's a nope all the way at all levels. We are not friends and I am sorry I read it. Yahira, who has 144 likes, says, RTC but TLDR, this was a mess, the romance was banal and the sci-fi was a mess. Most characters were underdeveloped, killing any payoff for some of the ending. This wanted to be too much and delivered too little. The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley, ARC, gifted by avid reader press. Look. I don't want to be the Debbie Downer of the group. I want to love things. But when I am told I will be reading a hilarious, ingenious romp, a thrill ride even, and all the blurbs gush over ITMY, expectations are sky high. There are many people who have loved this. So please read their reviews. But for me this had one too many uses of the word lugubriously for my tastes, and that's just the tip of the iceberg if you will. As much as I can describe this. The government has a time door and creates a secret department to study what happens to expats. People from the past. I can't really explain a lot of the whys of this book. A lot of the time travel stuff is lampshaded early on and most of the rules are thrown out the window in the first few pages. There are 5 people from the past. The most important being Graham Gore, a lieutenant aboard the HMS Erebus during the Franklin expedition, and who this whole fanfic is based around. Our nameless MC is his bridge, or handler, to the present and, of course, falls in love with him. It's a slow burn romance, taking over 200 pages to get there, and I can honestly say I felt nothing for these characters or the relationship. For most of the book I thought everyone was gay. I'd rather read a book about Martha, the 1600s lesbian who's into movies and Tinder. Our MC is British Cambodian, and this is used in a lot of awkward moments about race and attempted discussions on post-colonialism politics. I get that she's supposed to be carrying family trauma and trying to be a model minority. But she never seems to develop beyond this. Girl, you're in love with a Victorian white man. You work for the government. I thought this was tied to the story in a flimsy way, and just name-checking Frantz Fanon isn't enough. That first line says so much. So I really wished we had gone deeper and connected it to the plot in a more substantial way. The writing in this book is that breezy banter that can get grating after a while. Can someone just please have a real conversation? The fish out of water aspect was squeezed to death. What bothered me most was how many strained metaphors and SAT words were used. The Mick never seemed like a person that would try to impress with her vocabulary. She's supposed to be a translator, writer, so someone who would think about word choices. Some of the metaphors were funny. Just hope they were meant to be. How about that time travel though? Without spoiling anything. And don't think kids since can't explain it. The last bit is where the slice of life or nothing happens. Novel turns into an action. Spy thriller. Sci-fi story. Everything was thrown in here. But nothing could fill in those plot holes. I've chatted with quite a few readers about this and none of us can make sense of it. I am assuming this was tacked on to the original fanfic. Lilia, who has 102 likes, says, reposting because Goodreads took down this review. And many others. DNF at 54%. The premise of this book sounded amazing and I was very excited to read it, but I quickly realized it isn't for me. The writing style is very strange. It's a mix of classic literature and modern syntax with a lot of millennial-type humor that was so difficult to get though. The characterizations and the plot didn't progress, they just happened. Like we only got a day of something and then the next chapter is just it's now the next month. And even then nothing happened. If is mostly interactions between the two main characters or between them and the other time travelers. And it's so incredibly boring. To me, I truly had no idea what was going on most of the time. I was hoping for this to be more spy heavy, but we only got some foreshadowing at 30% and 40%, and between that nothing happened. I can tell from other reviews things pick up at the end of the book, but that's not what I like. Just so difficult to get though because of the writing style and because not enough plot progression was happening. I would be interested in reading another book with this premise, but I did not enjoy this particular book. If you enjoy wacky stories that have unique characters just vibing for at least 50% of the book, you may like this. Thank you to the publisher and NetGalley for an EARC of this book. Lexi, who has 114 likes, says, this was so strange and I don't know how to feel about it. Update. Okay, I've thought about it. The Ministry of Time should have been right up my alley. I love the man out of time trope and the drama of a time travel romance. Give me a 19th century man trying to figure out a microwave and modern gender politics. I eat that up. But this book, unfortunately, was a bit of a mess for me. First off, whoever decided to market this as a romance should be fired. Or at least given a very in-depth PowerPoint presentation on the hallmarks of the genre. While there is a romance subplot, the context is so weird and off-putting that I can't actually believe it was ever meant to make the reader swoon. The inherent power imbalance between the couple and weirdly racist background that's implied to be at least a small fraction of the love interest's attraction towards the main character is frankly bizarre and cringe-inducing in the extreme. Everything about their relationship just felt so inappropriate. I also tend to have a hard time with the mechanics of time travel. And this book pointedly tells the reader to just not think about it. This is a very lazy approach, in my opinion, and did not endear me to the sci-fi elements or weird spy thriller events that eventually played out. Overall, I think the Ministry of Time tried to tackle too much in its 350 pages. There were some interesting ideas, but they were just bogged down by muddled metaphors and disorganized trains of thought. Robin, who has 191 likes, says, the most radical thing I ever did was love him. Okay, so he's a commander of an 1845 expedition to the Arctic plucked out of time before his death to the present day. And she's the person tasked with monitoring his transition to the 21st century. Of course I was going to fall in love with this one. Commander Graham Gore, the man that you are, follow me on Instagram.